Welcome to Switched on IT. This is the show where we talk about everything IT. I'm Barry. Today our IT experts, Doug Endersby from Oz Hosting in Sydney and Ray Sidney Smith, the small business advisor, Google small business advisor in Washington DC, are standing by. And today they are going to continue from the session that we did last week on disaster management and hone in a little bit on the current topic of the coronavirus. Doug and Ray, I think you're with us at the moment, are you? Yes? Okay. Guys, by the way, I should just explain that Ray is on the road today, so he's not in his usual office, and we have a slight lighting and sound issue, so please bear with us. The situation is not terrible, but just be aware that we do have an issue with lighting and sound with Ray. Ray and Doug, take this topic away for us, please.
Sure. Thanks, Barry. Thanks for the introduction. And Ray, I guess both our countries, Australia and the United States at the moment, are sitting there, and certainly our share markets, the ASX and Wall Street, have both been dramatically affected in the last couple of days with the impact of the coronavirus. In terms of our audience, which is small business folks that rely on IT for various aspects of their business, what do you think the implications are of the current coronavirus? It looks like it's shaping into a pandemic. What do you see as the implications for our audience?
Well, if you have, especially if a business has investments in the stock market, you're going to have some short-term impact there. The markets are going to try and correct for the supply chain issues that are happening out of China, and that will impact global markets. So that's kind of a short-term impact issue. In terms of longer-term impact, those small businesses and generally businesses that are in travel and tourism, and certainly restaurant and retail to some extent, in those travel and tourism areas, are going to be impacted to some extent. People are not going to want to go out and be in public, and there are going to be sometimes governmental issues of restricting tourism to certain places or from certain places because of this novel coronavirus 2019, that causes COVID-19. So we're in kind of a wait and see experience. You know what I mean? I'm no epidemiologist. I don't pay attention to the minor details of how this virus is spreading, but it is going to impact business to some extent. We have to be aware of the fact that there will be some minor impact. I think the overall impact for most small businesses, at least that I come into contact, will be limited unless for some reason coronavirus really starts to spread in Australia and the U.S. Specifically here for both of our countries. It's not going to really be that much of a big deal, but it will impact us if for some reason we see an expanse of new cases. Certainly cases that are leading to deaths.
Yeah. I think that the United States has got its own massive market of 300 million plus people. So, the economic implications are probably going to be a little less severe. I think you nailed the one which has probably got the biggest potential impact, which is just the impact on supply chains for businesses that are sourcing products out of China or sourcing components that go into their own manufactured products out of China. Just the disruption to manufacturing in China as a consequence of this could be quite serious for those US customers. I think in Australia we've got different things to be concerned about with regard to this. I think one of our major concerns is in the education sector, where where Australian universities play a very significant role in providing quality university education to to the region. So we have a huge contingent, literally hundreds of thousands of students from China and from India and right through Southeast Asia that attend Australian universities, and they're looking to come to start the academic year. We're on a calendar academic year, obviously, because of the seasons here, and they start in March, and we're already finding that there's significant problems with these students, and of course they're going to be looking at the amount that they're paying per year for their courses and wondering whether they should be paying that if they're not able to attend. So,
Doug, can
to
I
the
just
extent that there's small
Doug, can I
businesses
just come
that are-
back to your comment about supply chain? Given that we have a huge online shopping market in Australia, and much of that comes out of China, how's that going to impact businesses and, for that matter, consumers in Australia?
Well, we're already seeing the impact of that. I think it's at the moment for Australian manufacturers of products where they're competing against other suppliers or distributors that are actually sourcing their product from China. I think it's going to look pretty good in the short term. And I know of manufacturers in the textile sector that are Australian based, make quite sort of make technical textile clothing. So what we're talking about is fireproof, thermal underwear and those sorts of products, and products for extreme sort of conditions. There's always been the big suppliers of that for camping and outdoor and extreme sports and mountain climbing and the snow and those sorts of things. They are going to be struggling to get their usual product out of China, and they'll be looking towards a very limited pool of Australian suppliers. But I'd say for some Australian manufacturers, things look quite good in that respect. But then, of course, there's going to be some major Australian retailers that really are going to find themselves just lacking choices, and potentially I think we might even start to see some empty shelves if Chinese manufacturing is significantly affected and there's just no real alternative to these products or manufactured goods that rely on key components that are going to be in short supply.
We're probably going to see an impact on consumers as well, though, aren't we? If China is shut down, and we're seeing on TV huge sections of China that are completely dysfunctional, if manufacturing and retail in China is impacted so disastrously, consumers that buy things out of China are going to find that they're not going to have anywhere to source what they're looking for, right?
Yeah, that's true. To the extent that manufacturing output is significantly curtailed, clearly that has enormous flow-on effects, right through the whole, the whole retail sector, and ultimately that affects the services sector as well, because we're going to be looking at people that, potentially are losing income. If you're not working in the factory, then you don't have money to spend in the coffee shop or the restaurant or to go on a holiday. So the flow-on implications of this are quite significant. I think at the moment, modelling suggests that it could be, in China, it might wipe a couple of % off their GDP growth figure. I think the fact that they're still achieving very strong GDP growth is terrific, but it's going to have certainly some effect on us, and to the extent that Australian businesses have a customer base that includes the Chinese. It's not the education sector. We've also got to think about travel and tourism, where we have a huge component of the Australian inbound tourists are sort of coming from mainland China. That's a really significant aspect of it. And so the businesses that are exposed to that are going to see some significant economic implications. I don't know what we're talking about in terms of GDP growth in Australia, but I think there's already discussion that we'll be struggling to have any GDP growth at all as a consequence of this. The GDP growth we've got is quite it's a quite low level, and it seems to be quite tenuous. So I think we're going to see some impacts.
Is your computer driving you crazy? Is it slow or doing things you didn't expect? Well, having a computer crash or pick up a virus can be a complete nightmare for a business, so having someone local you can trust to get you up and running again is critical. The dedicated team of experts at Computer Troubleshooters Toowoomba West will put your mind at ease from the moment you walk through the door and will get your problem solved in no time, with a 100% guarantee on their work. Laptops, tablets, PCs, whatever you have, Roger and the team can fix it for you. So visit them today at 236 Bridge Street, Newtown. Can't get in to see them? No worries. Just call them on 4642 1331 and they'll come to you. Toowoomba Troubleshooters Toowoomba West on the web at www.computertroubleshooters.com.au/Toowoomba West.
Hi, I'm Neil from CGD Group, and we do printing with imagination. Our products and imaging have that wow factor. Whether it be business cards, flyers, the Coffee Gazette, or our brand new A5 video folders and animation. Have your business branding remembered. Call us today on 4639 5553. CGD Group, printing with imagination.
If you've lost your income or had a change of earning capacity through no fault of your own and are struggling with debt that you can no longer handle, you probably feel a bit like this ant. If the struggle is getting you down and you feel overwhelmed, there is an answer. Central Liaison has helped thousands of people break free of the debt struggle by handling their debt for them. Freeze all interest, stop the harassing calls from the bank and start enjoying life again. Call them today on 0409 344 070 for a confidential, obligation-free chat about how Central Liaison can help you take your life back. The number again, 0409 344 070. Call them now.
Morning, good morning, love to see the sunrise. Crazy Kevin on the radio. Power FM.
powerfmradio.com.au.
Catch up on all the latest news, sport and entertainment from around the region on Toowoomba's own online television station, PTV Channel O, home of the TRL Footy Show. Find us at ptvchannelo.com or take us with you by downloading the PTV Channel O app. Discover a whole new world of entertainment at www.ptvchannelo.com.
Ray, in terms of the United States, how do you think that what can businesses do, both in the US and in Australia, and especially online businesses, to protect themselves with this? Because we're hearing this morning, I was listening on the news to some information about a possible pandemic, and the news presenters were suggesting that countries need to be getting prepared now for a possible outbreak. What should businesses, online businesses particularly, and businesses with websites and so on, what should they be doing to prepare themselves?
Yeah, so first and foremost, they should be preparing contingencies for supply chains. If they are having issues with getting inventory filled in certain places, they should obviously be looking to get those solved otherwise. Second is educate yourself about how this particular virus, every virus is kind of different in the way that it communicates, and just overcoming basic myths. For example, things that are shipped from China can carry the coronavirus. That's not true. The coronavirus can't live in the environment of, say, ships that are carrying inventory from China to the United States. So being in one of those shipping containers for weeks, coming across the ocean, the coronavirus won't transfer packaged inventory to a consumer in that regard. And so a lot of people are fearful of opening up packages coming from China when there's no need to. So educating yourself and educating your customers about that is one way that you can do it. So maybe having a local doctor come on your social media video channel profile or whatnot, and just educate customers about those kinds of things, and making sure that you are preparing a brand message to customers so that you can be honest with them, right? So there are going to be impacts to your if there are going to be impacts to your bottom line, then explain that to them. Make sure that they're aware what's happening, when it's happening, and how it's happening. And you'll find that most customers are very reasonable when you are honest with them. And I think that's the best thing to do, is just pay attention to what's going on and be honest with customers. And I think customers are generally willing to be helpful to you.
Yeah, and Doug, where do you see the role of social media in disseminating information about this? I was watching a show last night on the people that are still in China, and they're struggling because of restrictions on social media in China. They're actually struggling to get information disseminated. How do you think that's going to, and what do you see as the role of social media in ensuring that information is both disseminated and that correct information is disseminated?
Sure. Your social media, as we've seen with Australia with our bushfire crisis, for example, when it's used by government authorities as an alerting mechanism and to make sure that there is very specific, credible information made available to people, it is a terrific tool. It can also, in a situation like this, be misused just by the general public because it is such a fabulous tool at conveying and distributing misinformation very quickly and very broadly. So, I think that in Australia particularly, it's a pretty orderly country. I think that as long as the various health authorities, in the case of coronavirus, it was the fire services previously with the bushfire crisis, as long as the health services have got credible channels, they'll be, as they did with the bushfires, Twitter, they made significant use of Twitter. You've also got Facebook and other social media tools and the websites of the authorities as well. I think we're in a good position to stay informed about it. I think the concern is, and we've already seen this in Australia, various sectors of the Asian community become quite concerned, I guess. They have their own social networks and their own grapevine, and unfortunately, I know that in some of the shopping centres and high streets that have got a very significant Asian population, that business in those areas has absolutely fallen through the floor because Asian folks are reluctant or reticent about mixing with lots of other Asian folks, and I think that's pretty unfortunate because the risk is it's not who you are, it's actually where you've been and where you've been recently. And I think there's no more level of risk being in, Haymarket, Chinatown in Sydney, or, Cabramatta or Vietnamatta, as we call it in the western suburbs, than being in, any other shopping centre right now. So, my hope would certainly be that people look at the risks, with a degree of, I guess, fairness, and just make their decisions on that basis, and rely on what the government authorities would be telling us about, where a level of risk is heightened, and just respond to that.
We saw a delightful example of misinformation. I don't know whether you saw this in the US or not, Ray, but last night there was an article on the news about a couple on the ship in Tokyo who the press reported had a wine club that they were members of, and that the wine club had taken pity on them and had sent a case of wine to them by drone and delivered it to the ship for them, and they were there drinking the wine. But the truth was that they disseminated this information on social media, and it wasn't true at all. It was a joke that they put out there, but the press got a hold of it and they said, "Oh, isn't this wonderful? These people are looking after their mates in the wine club and sending wine to them by drone." And in actual fact, they got the bottle of wine from the steward. So, I thought that was a good example of misinformation being put out there on social media. Now, Ray, I'm sensitive to your time today. I know that you have another appointment that you need to get off to. So let's just flip this over to you now. Do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think that if you're running any business, you should be paying attention to how this is affecting the general conversation around your business. For most of us, it's going to have relatively little to no impact. For the businesses where you're in an industry like travel and tourism, restaurant and retail, e-commerce, where you know that it's going to affect your business, you should be, one, paying attention to what's happening. There is a lot of internet chatter about it. So look to real sources like the WHO, your government, health services that are putting out legitimate information about what's happening with it, and then make sure you're setting up both brand messaging, right? You want to have good marketing language to correctly and accurately tell people what's going on, and the other side is to contingency plan. You want to make sure you know where your people are, making sure they're safe, but then also making sure that you have safe passage and transit of your inventory. So you want to make sure that those pieces are really being thought about. But otherwise, it's one of those things where we just have to kind of wait and see as to what the impact ultimately will be. How about you, Doug?
Yes, you've got to really look at it as business as usual and say, how do we maintain our usual level of activity? Think about your customers. What are your customers going to need? How is their behaviour going to change? How do you accommodate and adapt to that behavioural change? And then also with your own organisation and with your own staff, it's a case of what are the potential implications for us as an organisation? And I think one of the things that organisations will be considering now will be how to allow their staff to work effectively remotely. So I think we're going to see, maybe people looking at screen sharing sessions and the various tools to share files, share information securely, so that staff members can basically come to work at a home office and have all the tools available to them to work effectively, have all the information available to them, have the applications that they use, and be able to use those in a way which is going to be still no less secure than if they were actually working from their office. I think that's something that a lot of organisations are going to have to think seriously about in the weeks ahead.
Terrific. Okay, now that's been a very topical topic today, and this once this goes to air, we will probably have more information on this topic from the press. Thank you, Doug and Ray, for your input today. That's been really great. This has been Switched on IT. We've been talking about coronavirus today. Doug and Ray have discussed this now in the previous session to this when they talked about disaster management. We touched on it slightly, but today we've done a much more in-depth look at this topic. Now, a couple of things I want to remind you about. Don't forget that you can send us your comments and questions if you go to our website, www.ptvchannelo.com. You can go to our contact page and send us a message there, or you can email us at feedback@ptvchannelo.com. Send us any questions you've got, send us any comments that you want to make. Now, if you've missed a session, if you missed last week's session or any of the sessions for that matter, don't forget that all of our sessions, once they have run on air live, are available for you to review in our video on demand section. So you can go back and you can have a look at any of the previous sessions, review them, and you'll find the button for getting to that on the left-hand side of the main screen of our site. This has been Barry for Switched on IT. We'll see you again next week.